on the lives of our people. One is the issue of land is capital. You can actually walk into any bank and get money if you have a title. It is about, you know, the way you were born in an area, the land belongs to your father or your grandfather, but you cannot bury in that area because the land belongs to somebody else. Now, if you look at historically, we have had a number of commissions that have looked into issues of land. If you look at the Ndungu land report, it is very well documented who stole what. And if you want me, I can mention them because it is in the public domain.
Probably, I'm sure probably if you could attend that summit. Incidentally, has anyone of you been invited to the summit at State House? Because you have to get an invite.
I have not been invited.
They don't invite the real stakeholders.
Yes. So you feel
they don't invite the real stakeholders. I mean, like for us, we are right in the smack of the city. Counties are custodians of public land. We've not been invited. It's just like the anti-corruption thing. They didn't invite the real stakeholders. So they just invite people to come and kind of sanitize what the
So basically, it's more of a PR exercise.
Yeah.
Now, Fred, the answer to issues to do with land is not by giving one person title. It's not by saying that, and I hear my brother, Honorable Yusuf, touting on national TV that Jubilee has done so well in terms of issuing titles. That is not the answer. Moi gave out titles. Kibaki gave out titles. The same thing is what Jubilee is doing. Now, issues to do with land are very emotive. There are people who live, were born, the land belongs to their grandparents, but the owner of that land, in terms of title, is a different person. Yes. And it is well documented. Why don't we sit down and discuss the TJRC report? Why are we going back to State House to do a PR gimmick? For what purpose? Well, what are we discussing?
I want you to understand. You're providing an opportunity to discuss a TJRC report.
Let us discuss it in Parliament. Let us be very candid about it.
Implement it.
Let us implement it and say, this Yusuf, I don't know whether it is this one or who, stole this land. Let's discuss this report and let us implement the report. Because again, the recommendations are very clear. And these are issues that Kenyans came out from each and every corner. Why again are you bringing us to State House where Kenyans will not be there?
I'll give Bwana Yusuf Hassan a chance to respond to you, to Bwana Weke, before we move on to the next topic.
No, you know, the issue here, he has said it is an emotive issue.
Yes.
It is a historical issue. And this is what I have also said, in fact, that it's not an issue of title deeds or administrative. And I fully agree that, in fact, we need to look at it in a very serious way, and we should deal in implementing some of the critical reports that we've had in the past. I absolutely agree. But where do we start? What is wrong with the State House calling for a discussion to carry this issue forward and to get more ideas from the stakeholders that would be participating? You know, on one hand, we are saying there's a problem. On the other hand, we're saying we should not discuss it.
Yes. No, Fred, I think, let me just, we're not saying we should not discuss it. We are saying the time of discussion is over. We have done a number of discussions. We have paid a number of commissions. We have listened to all Kenyans. What we want now is not PR. It's not a discussion.
Do you agree?
We want that.
Are you in agreement with Bwana Weke that the State House Summit is a PR gimmick?
Well, not really, but I think what it does is to bring up the issue once again for Kenyans to begin discussing.
Yes.
It may be a PR gimmick, but at the end of the day, I agree with Brian in the sense that we need to start implementing the recommendations in that particular report, rather than discussing it, and we are not even aware about the content of the report. So I think the best thing is that, yes, there can be that State House Summit, but I would love to see, after the summit, us getting into the work of recommending, not recommending rather, but implementing the recommendations as they are.
Of course, what I can say is that the last State House Summit left Kenyans feeling more dejected than hopeful, because on the issue of corruption, when the president said he had done all he can and there's nothing else he could do, we're really hoping that this time it will be different.
You see, again, because I like to come here and talk facts, it's about swinging into action. Right? I'll give you an example of what we are doing as a county government with this land issue. Right? We started a project called regularization. We actually took time to understand why people are building without approvals. It was because they didn't have title deeds. right? Why the buildings were collapsing, because of the same thing. We took time to understand where are these people are and how can we give them access to their properties, so as Brian is saying, people can begin to feel ownership and can begin to take their documents to a bank and get capital. And it was so emotive. We did public participation. We even went and got a bill sponsored by the executive and passed by the county assembly called regularization. Started off this project 3 months ago. As we are speaking now, we've regularized thousands and thousands of land buying companies. We've told people, if you've built and you didn't have a title deed, just come with your ownership documents. As you're waiting for the national government to wake up and give you title deeds, we will regularize your buildings, we will give you approvals, and we'll ensure that your areas where you're living and you call home are actually yours.
And we're going to do that with finality, because again, if the government comes and does something else, it means whatever you're doing is futile.
No, you're using, that's what I was saying, the issue is not just land that is not been allocated to you. People have the green cards, people have letters of allotment. The government is just so slow, or just does not want to give title deeds. So to avoid now the double allocation, is you're taking it a step further and doing whatever we can as a county government. Now, you've not seen us holding summits. We are acting. We've spoken to Embakasi Ranching, Kamuthi, Kiambu Dondora, and all these land buying companies. We've gone to all of Pipeline and Dandora and Kayole and Umoja, and we are regularizing people's buildings. And that is what leadership is. You see something, you look at it, and you solve the problem. Not just sit down and hold summits where you sit down and discuss things, and there's nothing that's happening on the ground. Nothing is being implemented.
Definitely a very emotive discussion, and we just wait in a few minutes. In the next hour or so, the State House Summit on Land will be on, and it will be broadcast live right here on Citizen TV. It will be very interesting to watch the discussions taking place there. And now I want us to move to the headline on the Daily Nation, and it reads, "Watch it, Ruto warns Raila over military. The Deputy President tells opposition chief not to drag politics into national security matters." He says the President, as a Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, has a sole prerogative to make decisions that touch on Kenya's sovereignty. Of course, we've been discussing this issue of Kenya's withdrawal of troops from South Sudan, and what is seemingly a big looking like diplomatic tiff with the United Nations. And of course, today we're very honored to have a foreign policy expert with us, Dr. Anita Kiamba. And what do you make of this headline? Of course, this one has to do with the military, but even in the bigger picture of what is happening between Kenya and the UN, and as far as the UN mission to South Sudan is concerned.
I think my take is that it was a rash decision, in the sense that one of the pillars of our foreign policy is peace diplomacy. So we assume that as a country that has been engaging in mediation for a long period of time, actually since our independence from 1964, that would continually engage in places where they need our support. So to pull out the troops, I believe, was rather rash. Yes, given the fact that the UN said or gave us an option that we can send another, individual who could replace the one who was sacked. So I'm not too sure whether it was the right decision.
Yes.
Yeah, because this creates a lot of re-entry issues. Even though I think it has been said that Kenya will continually engage South Sudan in terms of peace. But I think our options are few when it comes to engagement with South Sudan. The peacekeeping effort is one of the major things that Kenya has been doing for a long period of time. So I don't know whether this gives Kenya a new direction in terms of pulling out peacekeepers wherever they are, or what we are likely to see.
Yes. Now, last week we had an instance where the PS even described UN Chief Ban Ki-moon as arrogant. What does it portend for Kenya when you start having such an exchange with the United Nations?
One of the things I think Kenya is trying to do now is to become more assertive in the international system, to become more assertive in terms of our foreign policy direction. But making such utterances will not help Kenya too much. Indeed, when we start identifying an individual as being arrogant, it means that, of course, there is a problem with the individual rather than the institution. Yet I think earlier on we had been told that there were systemic failures on the part of the United Nations. So I don't think we should go ahead blaming Ban Ki-moon. I think that was, again, another rash decision that we've done. And one would wonder what kind of advice is actually being given when it comes to foreign policy matters, because at the end of the day, we've put ourselves at a place where we cannot renegotiate when it comes to such matters.
And finally, before I come to Bwana Yusuf Hassan, of course, it's an election.
I would like to respond to that before we go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, first of all, let's look at the United Nations. Who is the United Nations? The United Nations is an intergovernmental organization. We are a member, an equal member of the United Nations. What has happened in this particular case was unprecedented. I have worked in the United Nations for many years. It has never taken a decision publicly for the Secretary General to announce on radio and television that he has fired a commanding officer of one of his operations without engaging and informing the country that has been affected, a country that has made a major contribution to peacekeeping operations, a partner of the United Nations globally. Kenya has been sending troops, peacekeeping troops, to countries since Namibia's independence, in the 90s. We have been a partner of the United Nations in many peace operations. We have made sacrifices. Our soldiers have made sacrifices in serving the international community and the cause of humanity. Now, for a Secretary General, and this is an outgoing Secretary General, he doesn't care politically the damage that he causes. He fires our commanding officer on the media, and that is the crux of this matter. It has nothing to do with our relationship with the United Nations or the United Nations relationship with us. We are a sovereign country. Having made that decision, what did you expect us as a country to do? Our integrity, our credibility was put on the line, and the President had absolutely no choice. He had to make a decision to assert our sovereignty. And in this particular case, one of the decisions that was made is that if the United Nations did not follow the normal procedure of firing even an ordinary member of staff, there's a long procedure. There's a report, there's an investigation. A portion then blame is then if the person is found to be a culprit, a decision is taken on that, and the country involved is informed through the normal channels of communication. That did not happen. Then the other element is that this commanding officer was in a critical war zone. When the decision was made, he had it on radio and television that he's been fired. That is completely wrong, and the United Nations has neither corrected that problem, nor has it apologized to the Kenyan government.
Okay. And of course, when it comes to the military, that complicates matters. You must agree that as the commander-in-chief, the president probably felt he had to do something just to boost morale for the troops.
Yeah, there's boosting morale, there's having an ego, and there's leadership. I think if you look at the bigger picture, in Southern Sudan, the Kenyan peacekeeping force in Southern Sudan are the most active force. They're the ones who are ensuring that civilians in Southern Sudan are safe. They're the ones that are escorting, and I'm told the women battalion, the Kenyan women battalion, are the ones who are escorting the South Sudanese and other civilian girls from work to school to home so they're not raped. Okay, so there's a bigger picture of safety that we are providing in South Sudan. Now, South Sudan is part of the East African community. We all know what regional stability means. We know how many Kenyans are doing business in Southern Sudan. So by making that rushed decision where you pull out your most effective peacekeeping force all at once without prior notice, I think you've missed the bigger picture. Because what that now happens is Southern Sudan can now get into a civil war because the largest peacekeeping force has been withdrawn. Your citizens who are living, working and doing business in Southern Sudan now are endangered. And if I was the president, I'd ask myself, am I willing to have this kind of an impact because of protection of one person? I think that's the question I would really have asked myself. And then furthermore, if it was a Kenyan sovereignty issue, as the deputy president is saying, we were given a chance to take another Kenyan. So United Nations have said, listen, we don't have confidence in the Kenyan that you have brought because we had a big issue with opposing people fighting, and the leadership of the UN peacekeeping force in UN mission in Southern Sudan did not do what they were supposed to do. So in every developed country, the head resigns. Yeah, since he didn't resign, he was fired. And we were told, listen, as a member country and a partner of the UN, please bring somebody else who's up to the task. And we chose this drastic thing. Last but not least, about Raila interfering with the military and so on and so forth. Usually when you're sending troops into a country or pulling them out, it goes through parliament. We're just wondering, this time, such a rash decision that has very wide ranging impact, why wasn't parliament consulted? It's something that should have gone to your defense and foreign affairs committee. You'd have looked at all the issues, then made a recommendation to the president.
I think everything in this country is politicized. We should not politicize a national security issue. It has nothing to do with an ego. The president made a decision to protect the dignity of the Kenyan. Once your your general has been removed, you cannot keep troops under command of another person. We were put in a very unattainable situation.
Let me respond to that, because that's incorrect.
And the president can, at an emergency, deploy our forces and then seek support from the National Assembly.
Later.
The president can also take the same decision and seek support from Parliament after the decision, because there are times when such decisions of national security cannot wait.
I agree, but two things that...
And so let's not politicize this issue. Once our sovereignty has been put at the credibility of our sovereignty, the credibility of our soldiers. This is a general from the Kenyan army, for heaven's sake. He's not an ordinary street person. You cannot fire him just like that without consulting the sovereignty.
Very quickly, just two things that are incorrect. First of all,
we do have an expert today, so she will actually tell us the truth.
We did not pull out our troops because of a national security issue. Actually, pulling out our troops is what could potentially cause a national security issue, because now you could have a country that is your neighbor that's unstable. That's one. Number two, I don't think you're correct by saying that the president can come later in parliament, only in emergency situations. This is not emergency situation. Number three, the general was not just a general of Kenyan troops. He was the head of United Nations mission in Southern Sudan, UNMISS. He's in charge of all the UN peacekeeping force, whatever, not just for the Kenyan troops. So there's no moral issue when the general is pulled out. And we're given a chance to bring another general.
Brian.
First, when I hear Honorable Yusuf Hassan pulling a big word like sovereignty, our sovereignty is not at stake. So pulling such big words without substantiating, there's nothing like our sovereignty was challenged, because the procedure that was used clearly is very clear that our sovereignty was respected, and that's the reason why the procedure in terms of deploying those troops. Now, were we offended? Yes, we were. Was our sovereignty at stake? Absolutely not. This is a clear case of responding to a mosquito bite by a hammer. That you've been bitten by a mosquito, you you literally hit it. Yes, we could have been offended, but the greater good, if you're to analyze as a country, the greater good for us being in South Sudan supersedes a number of things. The reason why we went to Southern Sudan was not a PR exercise, was not about sovereignty, was about ensuring that we protect the lives of women and children and the people of Southern Sudan. And more so because we are the ones who negotiated for that deal. We've done so much as a country to ensure that we stabilize Southern Sudan. Then you decide as a president to pull out your troops just because one of your general was fired and procedurally? Really, let's be honest. As a president, you need to make decisions based on the greater good of not only your citizens, but the neighboring country citizens. Now, even if we were offended, that was quite grave, because now, where do we live? How does Ban Ki-moon's decision help Southern Sudan? Were we supporting Ban Ki-moon? Absolutely not. We went there to support the people of South Sudan. So whatever words you want to use to coin it and to galvanize and to sugarcoat what the president has done, it was a rash decision that is not well thought out. And really, let's be honest, the people who are advising the president are misadvising him. Because you cannot pull out troops just by the mere fact that there was an unprocedural issue on an individual. That is what we ought to have dealt with.
Yes.
Now, the other issue was, is it wrong for the leader of opposition to discuss issues of foreign policy? Absolutely not. When George Bush decided to invade Iraq, the Democrats have consistently questioned that.
Not a single
They
senior
did
Democrat.
that. And do you
Not
know
a
the
single.
campaign issue for Obama when he was coming into power? You know,
Yes.
the key issue was that he wanted to pull out troops
Okay.
from, and it was a serious campaign issue.
Okay.
So you cannot say not at all. There is nothing wrong with the official opposition leader to say, look here, this was wrong.
The Democrats
And I want us-
supported the
I want
war
us
in
to
Iraq.
I want us to wrap up this discussion, Dr.
Wrongly or
Dr.
rightly.
Kiamba. Of course, we rarely discuss, it's an election year, but we've not seen any candidate really talk about foreign policy or international relations as part of their campaign agenda. It's usually corruption, roads and other things. But when it comes to Jubilee and Uhuru Kenyatta's administration, how do you rate them in terms of foreign policy, international relations, given that even John Pombe Magufuli took a whole year before visiting Kenya?
Okay, maybe on a scale of 1 to 10, I would
Yes.
give the government close to 8. Yes. The reason why I say that is because with this particular government, we've seen quite a lot of summit diplomacy taking place. We've seen the president participating heavily in a lot of the deals that have been signed on our behalf. And to a large extent, I think Kenya has been brought where it should be, where it wasn't in the past. One would actually begin comparing from the time of independence to the current government or the current leader. And on a rate of between 1 and 10, he's been the only active president so far. The first president was never that active, the second one not that active. Kibaki either was not also that active. So we have seen a lot of activity with our president.
Yes.
But in terms of some of the decisions, like this particular decision that was made without consultation, that more or less erases some of the gains that the government has made in terms of projecting Kenya in the international system.
Okay. You still want to add
Yeah, I
something
think
to that?
I think President Uhuru Kenyatta is the most active foreign envoy that we have in the country. We have improved our relationship with many countries. We have become more assertive and more visible. Our voice is heard all around the world, and in particular the president has played a critical role in the East African community. I'm even surprised you brought up the issue of Magufuli, because the president is a Pan-Africanist, and he's been driving the East African community agenda of unification, economic, social and political unification. He's played a critical role in the African Union, to the point now that we have nominated our own foreign secretary, our own cabinet secretary, to run for the chairmanship of the Africa Union Commission.
Yes.
And we have an overwhelming support of the African countries for her to be elected the next chairperson of the Africa Union Commission.
Okay.
So we are doing extremely well. Our opposition and the critics of the president are very lazy. They usually pick up on low-lying fruits, things that they can easily read through the newspapers and then speak at a public rally to criticize the government. There is no homework done, there is no research to critically look at our economic, political and foreign policy development.
Yes. And probably it would
and the
help if-
opposition is very weak
Yes.
when it comes to foreign policy.
Yes.
They have no clue what is happening.
And
in
we
our
do hope
foreign
that in the
policy.
near future, State House will also host a summit to discuss foreign policy and international relations, so that we can actually take this discussion forward. But for today, remember, State House is hosting a summit on land matters, and that is happening in a few minutes, and we'll be broadcasting that session live here on Citizen TV. But for now, Power Breakfast continues, and let's now enjoy some music.